checking out Pac-10 Sports Talk. We're in week 14 of the NCAA football season. We're going to recap last week's games in the Pac-10. We're going to start off with UCLA's loss to Arizona State. Score was 34-55. Joel, what did you see out of the game?
Well, after the first quarter, if you're watching, UCLA's up 17-0. Offense is clicking for UCLA, which as of lately hasn't been happening. So, and plus, UCLA knocked out Arizona State's quarterback Stephen Threet with a concussion. So after the first quarter, you're probably thinking it's going to be a blowout, especially since last week we had said on this show that for Arizona State to be successful, they're going to have to do it through the air. So at first I was a little bit scared for them, but for the remainder of the game, Arizona State was just on fire, both offensively, special teams, defensively. On offense, Osweiler, the new quarterback that came in, just had a phenomenal day. Threw for 380 yards, 27 for 36, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The offensive line opening up holes for the running backs that had some big games, and then the defense shutting them down basically for the last 3 quarters. And for Arizona State, I mean, a great win, but for me to see that they haven't given up yet, I think that was a huge thing, that they're still fighting the dog. So,
yeah, the biggest thing that came out of this game for me was, does Arizona State now have a quarterback issue, have a problem? I think they've settled that issue in the last game. Speaking of Osweiler, he's a big kid. What is he, 6'7", 6'8"? 6'8". He's as big as Cam Newton. Until I saw Newton this year, I never knew quarterbacks were 6'8". But this kid is. So I was a little surprised to see that kid that big in the Pac-10 throwing a football around. And as Joel said, he came to the game, got his chance, put up some gaudy numbers, and he did something that he didn't throw an interception, which is something unusual for Arizona State fans. They haven't seen that for a while, but Treat in the action. Also, when he went in, they were trailing 10-0, so they picked up the pace and started blowing the lid off the game. ASU now they need to have one more win to get to a bowl game. They need to beat Arizona State next week, and Rick Neuheisel, meanwhile, he's not going to be going bowling this year, sadly to say.
Okay. Let's talk about the next game. Washington beat Cal 16-13. Jack, did you check out the game?
I happened to see that. Well, we used to say that California plays really well at home, but I'm not really sure that's the case anymore lately. But, part of that I'm going to have to attribute to the fact that Kevin Riley hasn't been around lately. He's been injured, and Brock Manson's been in, and quite honestly, the Cal ship hasn't sailed as smoothly with him at the controls. Brock Manson's inability to move the Bears makes me wonder a little bit about next year's Cal Bear team. Since he's been throwing about a 49% completion rate, and the Bears are going to need something better than that next year if they want to get into the top half of the Pac-10, where Tepper won't be taking any heat. So, on the other side of that game, Chris Polk for the Huskies, he's on course to reach 1,000 yards next week in the Apple Cup with Washington State. He's had a great season, a stud player. He needs just 36 yards to do that, and also hats off to Jake Locker. Guys played 2 games with a broken or cracked rib, and won both of them. That's amazing to me.
I went to school with a cracked rib once. Did well.
That's almost the same thing.
Almost the same. No, I watched this game and 3-0 at halftime. Kind of trying to snooze. Wake up, watch the game. It was kind of a snoozer, but not a lot of offense. But in the second half, the offense started clicking. Polk had a great game, and it all boiled down to the end of the game where Jake Locker throwing the 46-yard reception to Javon Kurz, diving for it, and then as that play continues in the waning moments. On a 4th and goal, you can either tie it or win the game with a touchdown, and Coach Sarks decides to go for it, and sure enough, that paid off. But definitely was a gutsy call. It paid off, and good for Jake Locker. Who, whether you like Jake Locker or not, I think he's a great kid. I think maybe not had the success that we all thought he would have, but I'm glad to see he's at least in a position to maybe end his career with a possible bowl game. So good one for Washington.
Okay. Next game we want to talk about is Stanford shutting out Oregon State University 0-38. Joel, is that a fun game to watch?
Well, you got to give it up to Oregon State's offensive line. I thought they played really good. In fact, their offensive line was so good, Jaquiz Rogers had a tough time running through it. But But just Oregon State's offense in general, their rushing game only put up 66 yards for 2.6 yards per carry. Cats, another kind of disappointing day, throwing 3 picks, no touchdowns, tough time moving the ball. But this all came down to Stanford and their offense once again. Let me back up 1 second. You got to attribute some of the offensive woes of Oregon State to Stanford's defense, who we've talked about, has played very well. But now to Stanford's offense, again, it was the luck show, going 21 for 30 for 305 yards, 4 touchdowns, zero picks. It seems like we talk about him with these type of gaudy stats every week. But he did something, broke a Stanford record with 28 touchdown passes, which surpassed John Elway. The main thing right now, if you're a Stanford fan, everything's going your way. You've moved up to number 4 in the BCS. You're guaranteed a BCS bowl game now. But the only thing that would be in the back of my mind is your head coach. Is he staying, or will he be going to Michigan? His name is at least rumored to be going to his alma mater, Michigan. That at least would be sitting in the back of my mind.
Okay, Joel, so do you think he's going to be back next year?
I don't know. A couple years ago when the position originally opened up, he applied for that, and some thought he would get it, but they ended up giving it to Rich Rodriguez. So I don't know if he felt like that was a slap in the face. He's got a good thing going, obviously, in Stanford, but that's where his roots are. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. With the turmoil going in Michigan right now, I say he stays at Stanford. But
It's going to be tough to turn down your alma mater, though, I think.
Yeah.
So what did you see out of the game, Jack?
I'd like to say something about that game. 38 points by Stanford was a no-brainer. We knew they'd put 38 up. The 0 by Oregon State was a little bit of a surprise. Didn't expect that. I said last week that Oregon State doesn't run the ball very well away from Reser Stadium, and 68 yards kind of bears that out, I'd say. It's interesting that, Stanford's probably fielding maybe their best team ever since, I think, 1940 or so. They had a 10-0 team that won the Rose Bowl. But since then, this is probably the best team. But on the other hand, they had 38,000 fans at the game this last week. That's just that's incredibly poor turnout for a team of this caliber that's ranked 4th in the nation. Shame on you, Stanford fans. Additionally, the Cardinals aren't a team that travels very well, so they're going to go to a BCS bowl game, but it's yet to be determined where they're going to go. But it's probably the way that the Stanford fans travel is going to have something to do with it. I don't know how that's going to work. As far as the Beavers go, now they've got to beat the number 1 team in the nation, Oregon, just to get a bowl bid, and they're looking for the 5th straight bowl game in a row. That'll be a school record. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for the Beavers. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Next thing we want to talk about is USC's disappointing loss to Notre Dame, 20-16. Jack, what did you see out of the game?
Well, I was honestly pretty surprised that USC didn't win the game, although you could put an asterisk there perhaps because Barkley didn't play very much. And I think that was the key to the game. USC has Barkley's thrown for 200 yards plus 6 times this year, and obviously with him not in there, with Mitch Mustain coming in there and trying to take up the slack, just didn't work out well. He seemed like he was, understatement, seemed like he was a little bit hesitant, he was tentative, just didn't throw the ball with the authority that, Barkley would have done it. But the good thing is that Barkley is just a sophomore. He's going to be back next year. The Trojans will be back next year. They're going to be a force to be contended with, just like they always are. They're still USC, and I believe Barkley's going to be back there for the game against UCLA this weekend. So that'll be an interesting game.
I know a lot of people don't like USC, especially if you're most Pac-10 fans because of the success they had. But you can't tell me, you guys, that the Pac-10 fans at least weren't in this game wanting them to beat Notre Dame, because we all can't stand Notre Dame. And defensively, USC, they played well enough. That's been their Achilles heel, has been on the defensive side. They forced 4 turnovers. And Notre Dame, although playing with a backup quarterback, didn't have really great success against that defense. But offensively, you hear that football's a game of inches. I just didn't know that's how the offense for USC was going to move the ball. They like you said,
3 inches in a cloud of dust.
80 yards rushing, 177 through the year, and they severely missed Barkley. But I just thought Mustaine, who started a full year when he was at Arkansas, or started 8 games, I just expected more from them. But even with their offensive woes, they still were in a position to win the game. Ronald Johnson missing a deep pass in the waning moments of the game that could have won it, but still put themselves in position, which I think is a bright spot, but still a tough loss for the Trojans.
Okay, we got one more game to talk about. Arizona going down and visiting Oregon. Got shut out, 29-48. Joel?
Again, another slow start for Oregon, 19-14 at halftime. But like a typical Oregon fashion, at the end of the game, you lift the scoreboard and it's 48-29. Your normal culprits did well. You had LaMichael James, another successful day, a couple touchdowns by Jeffrey Mell, and Darren Thomas. We just talked about the season that Andrew Luck has had with 28 touchdown passes. But kind of going under the radar is Darren Thomas, who has 26 touchdown passes. So I mean, he has had a great year, and the defense stepped up in the second half when they needed to for the Oregon Ducks. For Arizona, you're on a little skid. You're on a 3-game losing streak. It'll be interesting to see how they rebound, especially in the Territorial Cup this next coming week. But a good night for Foles, who threw for over 400 yards for him. So.
Well, Arizona came into Eugene. They were like the #1 rushing defense in the Pac-10. Well, but when they left, they were the 5th-rated rushing defense in the Pac-10. And that's the nature of the Oregon offense, how explosive they can be.
Whoa!
Change your sacks from 1st to 5th in one game. That's pretty amazing. Another interesting note to point out in the Duck game is Josh Huff had a great game. Tuanay didn't get to play. He's injured. He's out for the year. And so Huff stepped in. 3 carries, took 1 to the house for 85 yards. Guy's a speedster. It's going to be a nice asset to the Oregon Ducks for years to come, as I said, just a freshman. And on the other side of the coin, I'm not sure Chip Kelly's very happy with the pass defense. Nick Foles put up 448 yards, which is the most any Arizona Wildcat has thrown for him since '07. So not a bright spot for the Ducks there. It's also interesting that for the last 3 games, the Ducks have won the time possession battle. And if you're a Duck fan out there, you know that that's something that doesn't usually happen. Because like for every game for the last 2 years, almost every game, the Ducks haven't won that battle because they scored in like 1 minute and a half or 2 minutes. Yeah. So what that tells me, though, is that the Ducks are having a much tougher time moving the ball here in the last 12 quarters, last 3 games. Because only in the last 4 quarters have they really dominated the game. In 8 quarters, it's just been a push. So, and going into the last game with Oregon State, then possibly a national championship game with Auburn, that has Duck fans just a little bit uneasy. That dominance is just quite not there lately. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Okay, there you have it. Thanks again for checking out this video. We've got 2 more segments coming up. We've got the Pac-10 predictions. You're going to want to check that out. And another video you want to talk about, for sure see, is our national predictions. Thanks again for checking us out. Pac-10 Sports Talk.